I'm John DeVore. Welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about something that's not music. It is audiophile, and it's not something that people talk about that much. I talked about it a little bit in a video I made that tracked sort of the history of my equipment, all the various hi-fi systems I've had over the years. But what I want to talk about is knob feel. Knob feel is, to someone like me, as sexy as it sounds. And I do not feel like I'm a pervert, but I am an audiophile. Knob feel refers very specifically to the feel of a knob on a piece of hi-fi equipment when you turn it. The resistance of the knob. Does it have detents on it? The feel of the actual physical knob itself. Knob feel is definitely a part of audiophilia, and it's part of the gear love of an audiophile, and has very little to do with the music love of an audiophile. At the end of last week, I was reminded starkly of knob feel. And before that, there was a video from Resolution AV where the owner of Resolution, Adam, one of his sons, goes around, and Resolution AV, a part of their company is hi-fi buyers, and they buy and sell a lot of vintage hi-fi. And so his son went around and turned the knobs of many different hi-fi components and rated the knob feel of all of that hi-fi. And I loved it. It was an amazing video because, first of all, the kid was being honest about it. I think for the most part the kid was experiencing the knob feel of these various things for the first time and describing them and then giving them a rating, which is awesome. And also, it's sort of like there's a whole sector of audiophilia that is ashamed of the love of gear. And as I mentioned in that video where I talk about it, I am not ashamed of it. I love gear. I've loved it since I was a kid. It doesn't mean I love music any less. You know, the world is not, even though some may have you believe it, the world is not a zero-sum game. You can love many things. I love music. I love the gear as well. And knob feel is very important. So I was reminded of knob feel at the end of last week when a preamp came. I asked for this preamp, so I spotted this preamp when I was in Denver. I was at Denver at Oral Hi-Fi for an event there that I've talked about in a couple of videos. And Oral Hi-Fi, like Resolution here in Brooklyn, Oral Hi-Fi has an amazing used gear component to their hi-fi sales as well. And he's got a couple of great technicians, and so they buy used gear, they go through it, fix it if it needs to be, refurbish it, upgrade it now and then if that's appropriate, and then they sell it with a warranty. I love vintage gear, and I have quite a bit of it. And the experience is you really sort of have to know what your expectations should be when you're dealing with used gear. Some used gear is exquisite. Some used gear is as good as a lot of new gear you can buy, if not better. It's not better than the best new gear you can get. I would never claim that. But some of it is great. The problem is with a lot of this used gear is that it's old and it is out of warranty, and in many cases that the company that made it may not exist anymore, and certainly spare parts are going to be very hard to come by. And so in my experience buying stuff on eBay, occasionally you get one that's just great, and sometimes you get one that's not, and you end up having to spend more than you paid for it to get it up and running correctly, or you have to send it back for a refund. So there's a little bit of a crapshoot. When you buy it from a dealer, not from eBay or reverb or whatever. When you buy it from a legitimate dealer who sells it with a warranty and who has a tech going through all of the gear, it's much safer. You're going to be paying more for it, but it is totally worth it. From Resolution here in Brooklyn, many years ago, I bought a pair of, it was a dream amplifier of mine, the Threshold SA1 monoblocks. I bought a pair of those from the Resolution, and they were absolutely beautiful. They were exquisite, worked perfectly. It was wonderful. And now recently I bought a vintage, this is probably a 1980, 1982 maybe, preamp from Aural Hi-Fi in Denver. And it works perfectly. And it is the best example of knob feel that I am aware of. So let me talk about what it is. The preamp, this is a Mark Levinson Audio Laboratories before Madrigal owned Mark Levinson, the brand. So this is way back when they were in Connecticut. This is back, so Mark Levinson Audio Laboratories, or whatever it's called, they started in the 70s, mid-70s, and sometime in the mid-80s they were purchased by Madrigal. And they carried on to, they carry on to this day. They are now, Madrigal was in turn purchased by Harman International. So, you know, it's fishes eating fishes eating fishes. But Mark Levinson audio components exist today. They are quite different from what they were back in the 70s and early 80s. Levinson is certainly, he's a very controversial figure, rightfully so in the high-end audio, but those first components that he made and sold under his named brand back then were they were exquisite components. John Curl designed some very early stuff for him. So the first product Levinson made was sort of a pro audio kind of preamp. It had meters and tone controls and things like that. The first real home audio component that Mark Levinson produced was the JC1 preamp, which is a beautiful minimalist preamp designed by the legendary John Curl, soon to be followed by the JC2, which became the ML2, which were 25 watt per channel pure class A monoblocks, big giant monoblocks. Another amplifier that I've always lusted after, and that Aural Hi-Fi has, but I was good. I didn't go near them. John Curl left Levinson. The JC1 preamp became the ML1 preamp without really any redesign. The ML1 preamp was a beautiful preamp, a very slim outboard power supply. It was the same as what the JC1 was. One of the things that differentiated the Levinson components, especially their preamps, from other high-end audio preamps out there. So Audio Research had a preamp out at this point. Conrad Johnson at this point had started up. Krell may or may not have had their preamp out at this point. But the Levinson preamps were built to instrumentation grade specifications. So all of the parts within, all of the switches, the potentiometers, everything in there was absolutely top grade. Very, very exquisitely made. And this contributes greatly to the knob feel. So the ML1 preamp, Levinson realized he could do even better, and legend has it that the Hong Kong distributor thought that they would be able to sell a dual mono version of the ML1. So that became the very extreme ML6. A friend of mine has an ML6, or I should say a pair of ML6s, a pair of mono preamps called the ML6. Very cool. Separate outboard power supplies, completely separate chassis for left and right, and it's been done other times by other people, but it's a very cool piece. And then to sort of make it more practical, they made a new preamp called the ML-7, which was essentially the ML-6 in one chassis. So it had, basically it was the circuit of the ML-6, but in one chassis. Again, with that outboard power supply. The ML-7 is what I bought from Oral Hi-Fi. So my lust for the ML-7 goes back a long way, but my impetus for getting it is a couple of months ago. I was listening to my preamp, the JPA 66 Mark II from EMT, all tube, also with a big outboard power supply, and it's been absolutely perfect. I've replaced the tubes in it once, and it has been flawless. It's been beautiful for many years. I've used it for many years, and I use it for many hours every day for those years. But a fuse blew on it a couple of months ago. It turns out it was not a fault of the preamp. It was not a power surge or anything like that. It was a fault with the fuse holder inside the power supply for that fuse. Swapped out the fuse holder, put a new fuse in there, and it's good as grass. But that got me thinking. When that popped, in my first panic, I was looking around. What was I going to do for a preamp? And I have a couple of preamps here. None of them I wouldn't call any of them reference level. I have some excellent integrated amps. I have a lot of things that I can play, and I did have some things that I swapped in and played for a while. But there was nothing that could just slip in and replace the EMT preamp. So the gears started going, and I was like, I want to get a really cool solid state preamp with a great phono section that I can just swap in when I need it. Fast forward a couple of weeks, I'm in Denver doing my in-store song and dance with Jeremy at Oral Hi-Fi, and I'm perusing his amazing used collection of vintage gear, and I spotted an ML-7. Oral Hi-Fi does not yet have demo O bronzes, so I thought I would be kind, and in order to help Jeremy maybe get a pair of O bronzes in his store sooner to play for his customers, I was like, you know what? If that preamp has the moving magnet phono section, which is what I would want because I've got great moving coil step-up transformers, if you can make that preamp have a moving magnet phono section, I'll take it in trade towards a pair of demo O bronzes. And sure enough, that's what happened. Last week, my ML-7 arrived beautifully packed by Oral Hi-Fi. I did an unboxing video, which I think I'm going to put in over my talking about it right now. There's a few things that I really love about this preamp. First of all, it's great sounding. It's very cool looking. It's from an era when I love the era of these very slim, I think they're basically single rack mount height preamps. Just the bare bones. So that an ML-7 has, from right to left, it has a beautiful Penny & Giles volume pot. Penny & Giles was the creme de la creme in the 80s. Up until the 90s, I think the top of the line Levinson preamps used a Penny & Giles pot all the way into the Madrigal era, until they stopped using a pot altogether and started to use some sort of a rotary encoder that would switch relays and resistors and such like that for their volume. But up until they changed to that style volume control, they used the creamy and delicious Penny & Giles volume pot. I have another piece with a Penny & Giles. I have a Mod Squad Line Drive Deluxe, which is a passive preamp, which also uses that Penny & Giles, and is also just beautiful. But it is not nearly as good a preamp as, it isn't really even a preamp. It doesn't have a phono section, and it's not as good as the Levinson. So the Levinson then has dual mono balance controls, and these are actually switched stepped attenuators. They're not additional pots in the signal path. And then a source selector, and then these beautiful little toggle switches, very, very sweet, beautiful little toggle switches with very short little chrome actuators. And anyone who has had vintage audio research or convergent audio technology knows that these little switches are great sounding, but when you use really long switch actuators, when the lever that does that switch, when it's really long, as it was in those vintage audio research and convergent audio preamps, they break, and that is a pain in the ass. So I really love these sturdy little switches. Red LED, because back in the day it was red or green. There weren't really any other options back in the early 80s. Dual mount mono power supply with right and left LEDs indicating on. Pain in the ass KMAC connectors. But I had a vintage stash of Fisher KMAC plugs that I've been carrying around with me for decades, that I built into some cables, and so that allowed me to connect it, turn it on, and it's absolutely beautiful, wonderful. I love it. Big, bold, warm sounding, terrific bass, very nice phono section, very quiet. It's not the only thing that I own for knob feel, and for me, so knob feel was something that the Japanese mega receivers had sort of knocked it out of the park. So back in the 70s, the big Sansui, Kenwood, the Pioneer, those big receivers just had beautiful knob feel. The tuners, the analog tuners, had these big flywheels on them, and they were just beautiful knob feel. Totally destroyed. Mainstream hi-fi lost all knob feel in the 80s when those receivers just kind of gave way to those crappy little mass-produced receivers that we all shudder to think of from the 80s and 90s. So there's another piece that I own that I bought for the knob feel. I bought it for the knob feel and so what initially drew me to it, this is a Revox A720. Tuner preamp from Revox that's designed to be used with a power amp. And the tuner in it uses the super cool, it's a digital tuner display using Nixie tubes. Nixie tubes are vacuum tubes that have number displays on them, and they get different voltages and the different numbers show up on the tubes. It is the coolest shit. It's so NASA. I love it. It's very like Gemini era NASA. So I got it for that. I got it for the Nixies, and I kept it for the knob feel. The tuner knob on that has an amazing weighted quality, so you can spin it, but it also has these cool detents that synchronize with when each digit goes, when each next digit comes up on the Nixie display. Just a chef's kiss to the knob feel on that piece. And there are other things that have great knob feel. So anyway, a long-winded love letter to vintage gear and to knob feel. And on that note, I'm going to put on something equally 80s, equally early 80s, late 70s, and equally delicious. So enjoy some Ohio Players. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.